I want you to close your eyes for a second. Imagine waking up tomorrow and your bank account has 10 zeros in it. No alarm clock, no boss, no bills, no limits. Sounds perfect, right? That's what I thought too. My name is Marcus, and I've lived that life. The private jets, the penthouse, the boardrooms where billion-dollar decisions get made before breakfast. But I'm not here to impress you. I'm here to tell you what actually happens when you get everything you thought you wanted. Because nobody told me the truth before I got there. So I'm telling you now. This is my life as a billionaire. The raw, unfiltered version. I didn't grow up rich. I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment where my mother worked double shifts and my father counted coins before grocery runs. Money wasn't a topic in our house. It was a source of pain. And I made a decision at 14 years old, sitting on the floor of that apartment listening to my parents argue about an overdue electricity bill, that I would never feel that powerless again. That decision became my fuel. I didn't sleep much through my 20s, 4, maybe 5 hours a night. The rest was work, reading, building, failing, starting over. My first business failed in 8 months. I lost $40,000 I didn't have. I borrowed from everyone who trusted me, friends, family, a cousin who still hasn't fully forgiven me. Most people would have stopped there. I didn't stop. Not because I was stronger than everyone else, but because the alternative, going back to that apartment, to that powerlessness, was more painful than failing again. So I kept going. By 28, I had my first profitable company. Small, unglamorous, a logistics business that moved goods between manufacturers and retailers. Nothing that sounds impressive at a dinner party. But it printed money. And I learned the most important lesson of the climb. The businesses that look boring from the outside are usually the ones that make you rich on the inside. I reinvested everything. Every dollar the business made went back into the business, into other businesses, into assets. I didn't buy a car until I was 31. I didn't upgrade my apartment until my net worth crossed 7 figures. And even then, I felt guilty about it. Because somewhere in the back of my mind, that 14-year-old boy on the apartment floor was still watching, still counting. By 35, I had crossed into 9 figures. And by 38, the year everything changed, the number hit 10. $1 billion. I remember the exact moment I saw it on the screen. I felt nothing. Not joy, not relief, not pride. Nothing. And that scared me more than anything that had come before it. Here's what nobody tells you about $1 billion. It doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like weight. The moment the number becomes public, and it always becomes public, everything changes. People you haven't spoken to in years reappear. Cousins, former classmates, old colleagues who barely acknowledged you. Everyone has a business idea. Everyone has a cause. Everyone has a need. And you can never be sure again, not fully, not completely, whether anyone in your life is there for you or for what you represent. That paranoia is real. I'm not ashamed to say it. I started questioning every conversation, every invitation, every friendship. My inner circle, which was never large, got smaller. I had a relationship end because she said I had become unreachable. Not physically, I was present, but emotionally, mentally, I had walls she couldn't get through. She wasn't wrong. When you operate at that level, vulnerability feels like a liability. You train yourself to think 3 steps ahead in every interaction, to identify motive, to protect position. And after a while, you can't turn that off. Not at the dinner table, not at 2 a.m. when you can't sleep, not in the moments that are supposed to be just about being human. The money buys you access to everything, and slowly, quietly, it costs you the things that money was never supposed to touch. Let me talk about the decisions, because this is the part that changes you most. At the level I was operating, decisions weren't about products or marketing strategies anymore. They were about people's livelihoods. I made a call once, one call, 20 minutes, that resulted in 340 people losing their jobs. It was the right business decision. The numbers were clear. The division was bleeding and there was no viable path to profitability. I made the call. And then I sat in my office afterward for 2 hours unable to move because those 340 people went home that night and told their families. Some of them had mortgages, some had kids in school, some had been with the company for over a decade. And they never knew that the person who ended that chapter of their lives spent 2 hours staring at a wall afterward. That's the dark side of power that nobody shows you in the highlight reels. Every major decision at that level carries a human cost, and if you're the kind of person who got there because you genuinely cared, because you were driven by more than just ego, those costs accumulate. You carry them. I've made decisions that tripled revenue, and I've made decisions that I still replay at 3 a.m. wondering if I could have done it differently. The money doesn't make those questions quieter. If anything, it makes them louder, because the stakes are always higher, and the consequences always reach further than you can fully see when you're making the call. Nobody talks about the loneliness at the top. And I mean genuine, structural loneliness, not the kind you solve by being around more people. When you reach a certain level, the number of people who can genuinely relate to your reality becomes very small. Your problems aren't problems most people can understand, not because you're better than them, but because the context is completely different. Complaining about a deal falling apart that cost you $80 million to someone managing a monthly budget of $3,000 isn't a conversation, it's a disconnect. So you stop sharing. You internalize more. You process alone. You build this internal world that gets bigger and more complex while the conversations you have with most people stay on the surface. I had advisors. I had a team. I had people around me constantly. But I ate dinner alone more nights than I can count. Not because I had to, because I had stopped knowing how to just be present with another person, without the armor on. That's what the climb does if you're not careful. It optimizes you for performance and leaves you underdeveloped for everything else. So why am I telling you all of this? Not to discourage you, not to say the money isn't worth pursuing. I'm telling you because the version of wealth most people are chasing is a fantasy built on highlight reels and Forbes covers. And if you build towards a fantasy, you'll either never get there, or you'll get there and feel completely lost when the fantasy doesn't feel the way you imagined. Here's what I actually learned from living this life. 1. The goal should never be the number. The number is a byproduct. The goal should be the problem you're solving and the impact you're creating. When the purpose is clear, the billion is a tool. When the billion is the purpose, it becomes a prison. 2. Protect your inner world more aggressively than you protect your assets. Your emotional clarity, your relationships, your ability to be present. These are not soft extras. They are the infrastructure that makes everything else sustainable. Neglect them, and the whole structure becomes hollow. 3. The dark decisions are unavoidable at scale. You will make calls that hurt people. You will choose between bad and worse. The question isn't whether you'll face those moments, it's whether you've built the ethical framework in advance to navigate them with integrity rather than just efficiency. 4. Loneliness at the top is not inevitable, but it requires intentional, deliberate work to avoid. You have to fight to stay human. You have to protect spaces in your life where the armor comes off, where you're not the CEO or the billionaire or the decision maker, where you're just a person. 5. The climb will cost you things you didn't budget for. Relationships, time, parts of yourself that were simpler and lighter before the weight of all this. Count those costs honestly before you accelerate towards the top. Not to stop you, to prepare you. I am not telling you to stop chasing wealth. I am telling you to chase it with your eyes fully open. Because the version of this life worth having is the one that actually feels like freedom rather than weight. It requires you to build the inner architecture before the outer one. Most people build the money first and try to fix the person later. But my advice for you is that you build the person first. The money will follow, and when it does, you'll actually be able to hold it. This is my life as a billionaire, the part they don't put on the cover. And if something in this story hit you, if you recognized something in yourself, in your chase, in your ambitions, then this channel is for you. Small decisions, massive consequences. Follow for more. I'll see you in the next one.